Hello, everyone. This is Legacy School, and this is Social Studies Year 6. Okay, in this lesson, we'll be looking at the armies and weapons of World War One. And to begin with, we need to have a look at the era before World War. Back in times, the European leaders of the empires were formed from aristocratic elite. This is attending military schools and training, and then they joined the army as army officers. And going into war was considered a great honor. World War One was the first time people who live in France and Britain and Germany as well witnessed a conflict and a wide range of fighting and damages, and especially damages that caused by modern weapons such as machine guns. In the pre-World War One, the armies were usually made of uh, infantry, foot soldiers, and cavalry, those who ride horses or horse riders. Soldiers would usually charge in formation to break the ranks of the enemy, meeting in open close combat. World War One marked the break in the type of warfare using um, like modern technologies in military fields. And military commanders also had to adapt a transition from traditional combat positions into a more modern one. Also, the shift should include using machine power instead of human or animal power. Okay, let's have a look at the kind of weapons that are used, and we start by machine guns. Instead of rifles that need to be reloaded and perhaps it take time, soldiers start using machine guns and allowed to shoot hundreds of bullets. And this advancing weapon caused great damages on both sides of the fight, and they were part of the artillery fire. Okay, tanks. This is heavy armored machine inspired by a farmer's tractor in Britain, and it was a major factor that break the German lines. Okay, poison gas. World War One was the first time chemical warfare was used. They were using gas like chlorine gas and mustard gas. These gases are very deadly and can cause uh, many diseases and blindness or blind, and can cause also death. Barbed wires, they were used in USA to control farms, in the farms to control cattle and animals, but also used as a military um, tactical weapon to impede the advancement of infantry or the movement of soldiers. Air forces. First time skies were the battlefield, and aeroplanes were used in 1903, and the first planes were mostly for reconnaissance, to take pictures of enemy and positions, and to gain intelligence about the movements of the enemy, like for the purpose of surveillance. Later, they were used as bombers, dropping bombs, and shooters. They can shoot one another in the sky. And we have a great hero of these kind of battles, the Red Baron, the German um, fighter. Submarine, submarine warfare. These are underwater vessels used widely in World War One, and They were the main reason why USA entered the war. And Germany had the best technology of submarines at that time. Let's have a look at the Allies, the Triple Entente. Britain's army was considered the largest, the smallest, but the greatest in terms of readiness and professionalism. And it was like the smallest. It consisted of 247,000 soldiers, supported by 210,000 reservees. Okay. The three divisions of the British Army include British Expeditionary Force that was deployed across the Western Front, and Territorial Force. This is defending the home front, and we have Kitchener's Army. And the army reached a strength of 3.8 million during the war, and more than 70 divisions. Each wore khaki-colored uniform and was armed with a rifle and a bayonet and a grenade. The British soldiers were nicknamed the Tommies. Colonial troops, those are troops from the British colonies around the world, like 1.5 million from India, 1 million from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, South Africa, and West Indies. Navy. The British Navy was the biggest in the war, and they won naval arms race against Germany. It built the Dreadnought, which was the first class of giant steam-powered battleship, and it was a success. It used to blockade the German ports and prevent merchant ships during the war from being attacked by the German U-boats. And Britain had 74 submarines during the war, but of lesser technological effectiveness than the Germans. That is to say, German technology of navy or naval arms was more advanced than that of the British or than the rest of the Allies. Air Force. The British Air Force lagged behind Germany in terms of firepower, but quickly invented the Royal Flying Corps. It was a mixture of observation balloons and aircrafts, which includes only 2,000 personnel. Okay, eventually it combined with the Navy to make the Royal Air Force. French Army. French had the conscript army during peacetime. Every Frenchman had to serve in the army when he reaches the age of 20. French infantry troops wore colorful uniforms, which made them easy targets in trench warfare. And then they changed it into light blue. French artillery had a powerful 75 millimeters field gun, which fired 15 shells a minute. But it was very heavy. It needed a team of 6 horses and a crew of 9 men to operate it. In 1918, France had called up some 8.8 million men to serve. That's a big number. Colonial troops of France, like Britain and French, had also many colonies, and the colonial troops fought to their sides. We got 600,000 soldiers, mostly from Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Senegal, and soldiers come from as far as Vietnam and Tahiti, in the Pacific Ocean. Central Powers. The Triple Alliance. A German army believed in the idea of a nation at arms. That is to say, every man should be ready for any war emergency. And the population was trained to be ready for the fight, to use guns, and they undergo some military trainings. And it had the biggest army of 4 million soldiers and reservists. Each man carried a rifle, a bayonet, and a long stick grenade, nicknamed potato mashers. The Germany's elite forces were called stormtroopers. They were well trained and were often armed with flamethrowers, this horrible gun that throws flames. The German howitzers, these were the really big guns that were used in the fight, and they were able to destroy the lines of the Allies, firing balls that weighing 900 kilograms, and was able to destroy the walls of French forts. Germans were slow to develop tanks, building only 20 by the end of the war, but this was a disadvantage in the later battles of the war. Navy. The British had more ships. Germany had newer technology and better armor. The German submarines as U-boats, they were feared and sank some 5,000 boats over the war. And the Germans fought the war at the sea by attacking merchant ships and cutting supply lines coming from other countries to the Allies. And the sank of the civilian Lusitania liner in 1915, killing more than 1,000 passengers, almost considered the reason why USA was dragged into the war. Air power. Zeppelins were the Germans' feared balloon ships that fly over cities and drop bombs, and Zeppelins launched for the first raid in 1914 in the Belgian city of Antwerp, damaging buildings and destroying facilities. The Germans developed air force more quickly than the Allies, and they were very famous for their successful fighter pilot, the Red Baron. Austro-Hungarian Army. This was a conscript force like Germany, 2 million men, and they come from different countries within the empire. Cavalry units and all hands wore blue jackets and red breeches, often with tall caps, and they had to adapt the fighting on foot in the war. They were not well trained in like foot fighting or fighting on foot. Others nations involving in the war later. We have Italy, supposed to be in the German side, but they remain neutral until the end. They entered the side on the side of the Allies, and they attacked Austria-Hungary and the Alps mountains. They suffered major defeats after they reinforced by British and French troops. USA remained neutral, but dragged the war in 1970s after Germany said it would continue to blockade the sink ships carrying goods to UK, many of which were Americans. So many of the ships or supply ships coming to UK were American, and Germany actually sank most of these ships. That's why USA entered the war to protect its interests. Australia and New Zealand, they were known as the Anzac forces or troops. They fight alongside the Allies. The Ottomans empire was in a decline. They were not successful and they were not as strong as the rest of the countries. The Allied forces underestimated their power. They launched an attack on what is called Gallipoli, but they failed, and the Ottoman forces fought in the Balkans and in the Middle East. That is the end of our lesson. Thank you.